Have you ever thought about adding a flat white to your white Negroni? If you haven't, you should. And we're just about to. This is the Flat White White Negroni. Welcome back to the three-part series focused on the Coffee Negroni. If you haven't seen the previous video on the improved Coffee Negroni, which is a little closer to that classic Negroni flavor profile and style, then I'll link it above just now. And make sure you hit subscribe if you want to see the next recipe, which is the Americano squared, as well as lots more coffee and cocktail content like this. So the drink we're making today is a flat white white Negroni. So one of the popular variations of a Negroni is a white Negroni using gin, Suze, which is a bitter aperitif made from gentian root, and Lillet Blanc in place of the Campari and sweet vermouth. So on its own, it's an amazing drink, but I wanted to play around with it with the texture, see if I could take it even further, and also bring some coffee flavor to the drink to complement those nice delicate spice notes of the drink. Some of you might be familiar with a technique called milk clarification. And if you haven't heard of this before, what you do is essentially use milk to curdle a cocktail, and then when you strain it through a coffee filter, you're able to clarify the cocktail, and it gives the most incredible, silky, round, incredible texture without being creamy, as in like a White Russian. It also does a great job of harmonizing the ingredients in the drink, and it takes the edge off any of the kind of harsh bitterness or astringency, just like when you add milk to an espresso. It kind of rounds it out, makes it sweeter, takes off some of the bitterness. So in this process, the curds in the whey split when they come into contact with the acidity of the cocktail. And I'll show you how horrific it looks in a second, but you have to trust me because it is incredible when you get through to the end of the drink. So this drink takes the idea one step further, and I'm actually going to clarify a white Negroni using an entire flat white with a few twists and turns on the way. So before we make the cocktail, I'm going to head over to the coffee station and make a flat white, so come with me. Right, so we need a flat white for our flat white white Negroni. So going back to basics, a flat white is a combination of espresso and steamed milk, usually served in quite a small cup. And you want your flat white to be about, well, exactly 150 ml, if you can do that. Then we just know the proportions of citrus to flat white will definitely make sure the drink curdles. So in terms of the coffee, I'm going to grind 19 grams of coffee now. This is a pretty standard 1:2 ratio of ground coffee to liquid espresso. So 19 grams in, 38 grams out. And on the Slayer espresso machine, which I'm very lucky to work with, we're going to be extracting for about 50 seconds. But on a standard 9-bar extraction, you're probably looking at 25 to 30 to get a really nice balanced espresso. So when it comes to choosing a coffee, there's kind of two schools of thought with this when you're making a coffee cocktail. The first being to build on top of the flavors and characters already in the drink, which I've done in other videos, but this one is kind of the opposite. So one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given about making signature drinks and cocktails and whatnot is don't necessarily always worry about what's already there, but think about how you can add what isn't that would elevate the drink and make it better. So a white Negroni, especially this one, is citrus forward because we have to add some citric acid, which I'll talk about later, in order to curdle the milk. But what we want to do is find a coffee to contrast that, which is balanced maybe towards sweetness and has a real high body. So I chose 1829, which is a blend, the house blend from Watch House, and this is exactly that. It's kind of like hazelnut mousse, loads of chocolate in there, really heavy, really sweetness forward. So I'm going to extract this now. And then we're going to steam that into a flat white. So this coffee has loads of body as it is. We can keep it at a nice 1:2 ratio to kind of enhance that even further. And then we're going to add our steamed milk as well. So one of the nice things about this recipe is it also works with alternative milk. So what you want to do is slightly increase the citrus, which I'll talk about later, or the citric acid, but it works with alternative milk, making it a vegan-friendly drink. So we want to steam our flat white, and you can pour it. Latte art is literally pointless, but who doesn't love latte art? And then we're going to bring this over here. And let's make a flat white Negroni. So we've got our flat white. Now we need to make our white Negroni. So I'm just going to leave this over here for later. And what you want to do for this is make quite a big batch. A, because you're going to want quite a lot of the drink, hopefully when you've made it, but also because you need the length of the drink to get the proportions right in order for it to curdle. You can dose up quite significantly to make a big batch. You can go down a little bit, but I wouldn't go too much below this size. And it yields about 600 mils. So you're going to need a mixing glass. You're going to need a very big glass to mix the two together in. You're going to need a paper filter and a jug of some description. And we're going to need some scales. So I'm going to weigh out my ingredients, starting with the things that I don't really mind if they go down the drain if I get these things wrong. So in the past I've made this the other way around. Big proportion ingredients first, with the little ones later, and because citric acid and saline solution are so intense and so destructive if you get them wrong, I'd hate for us to have to throw away these big ingredients by proportion because of these little ones. So to begin with, saline solution made at 1 part good quality salt to 5 parts boiling water. And you'll see this in a lot of my videos. I add 1 gram of this per 100 ml of liquid pre-dilution. So we'll get through the recipe, but essentially we've got 15, 150, 150, 150, which adds up to 465. So we're going to add 4.65 grams of our saline solution. And just like the milk clarification process, this does a really good job of just taking the edge off bitterness and astringency. Has a real nice effect on a lot of cocktails, to be honest. And you just won't taste salt in the final drink, but you'll just get a really much more harmonious end result. So 4.6 grams of that, because it's a 465 gram batch. And we're going to start by adding 15 mils of citric acid solution. This again is at a 1:5 ratio. So 1 part citric acid to 5 parts boiling water. Give it a good mix together to make sure it's fully dissolved. Then we're going to add 15 grams. So I'm going to do this in a jigger just to be a little bit more careful. And then we'll make sure we get exactly 15 in there. And I know 15 grams of citric acid at 1:5 ratio will split 150 ml flat white. So we've got our very delicate ingredients in there. Now we go back to the kind of classic Negroni proportions. So equal parts, big, generous measures. Gonna go 150 mils of Suze. So Suze sits in place of Campari, which you'd get in a more traditional Negroni. And it's a bitter aperitif made with gentian root. So this is really nice on its own, quite bitter, but it's got lots of complexity, kind of barky, very clean. It's got a real kind of crisp malic bite to it as well. So a really nice complement in the citric acidity of the citric acid, obviously, and getting rid of the Campari in place of something white for our white Negroni. So traditionally, people would use Lillet Blanc. I quite like to use Cocchi Americano. I just find it has a little bit more body, which you really need when you're adding it to a full flat white. So this has a kind of quinine-like taste, similar to tonic water, and that complements coffee really well. So it's quite well documented that coffee tonic is a very popular drink. So coffee and tonic water, and we're going to add 150 mils of this, 150 grams I should say. And we're just going to pop that into our mixing glass. So when I first developed this recipe, I actually added the gin now, but I learned that you lose kind of the delicate notes from the gin, the kind of florality, if you add it now. So we're going to add that later. So what we need to do now is add the start of our white Negroni to our flat white. So this could be quite messy, so let's be careful. So now you want to add the cocktail to the coffee rather than the other way around, and that tends to work every time I've done it so far. Haven't done it the other way around, but this is the protocol usually. So gonna pop our flat white in our big vessel very carefully and confidently. 3, 2, 1, hoi! It worked. Oh, spilled it at the last second. And then we're gonna pour in slowly our white Negroni mix. So traditionally a white Negroni wouldn't have the citric acid or salt, but this is needed in order to curdle our flat white. So this is gonna look really horrible, but that's intentional. We wanna split out the curds from the whey in the flat white. It's worked already. It's disgusting really, it looks. But we're gonna strain this through a paper filter and it'll be really nicely clarified at the last minute. So we've got our flat white white Negroni looking grim, but that's what we want. So now what we want to do, leave this for 5 or 10 minutes, give it a good mix together. I'd give it a stir after a couple of minutes, but once we've done that, we're gonna pass it through a paper filter. So that's done its job. It's now very well curdled, and this is whole milk, but it's really important that this does work with alternative milk as well. So 2 tips when you do it with alternative milk. You wanna add a little bit more citric acid to your white Negroni mix. So I add 1.5 times, so 22.5 grams for a batch this size. And you also wanna make sure you steam your alternative milk flat white a little bit hotter. The temperature really helps encourage along the splitting process, and that just makes it a little bit more easy to manage. So with our dairy version, which just looks grim, we're gonna strain this through a paper filter. And as soon as we do so, well, actually almost as soon as we do so, we'll get a really nicely clarified drink. So the first thing you wanna do is pour just a small amount through into probably a secondary vessel actually. So I'm gonna pop this in here, which is the one we mixed the drink in, because this won't be clarified. This will come through as kind of cloudy and murky. And then once this bit is drawn through, which is actually pretty well clear, but you just get a little bit of murkiness in there. Leave that for a few, well yeah, until it kind of slows down. Then we can move it across and then pop this back through. And when we have the final liquid mix, it should be really nicely clarified. So what you can actually do is strain it twice through itself, and the second pass will go even finer, and the curds will almost act as a second layer of filtration. You can stop after one, but it's not quite as elegant and refined, but you have to be quite patient with this. So I've filled up my V60. You can use actually any paper filter for this. You can use Kalita, you can even use a clever dripper, but you really do have to do the double pass because some of it goes down the sides and you get like a murky first pass. So this is gonna take a really long time. Gonna move that to one side while it does its thing. And you'll be left with your strained, clarified white Negroni. What you wanna do before you bottle, you wanna add 150 mils, 150 grams of your favorite gin. This, I'm going with Tanqueray 10 because it has really nice citrus notes, and you actually lose some of the acidity when you milk wash or milk clarify the drink. So Tanqueray 10 is distilled with citrus amongst its botanicals, and it has that really nice vibrancy and pop. So you'll be left with about 450. What on earth just happened? 450 mil, 450 gram. Where did that come from? That flew out of the vodka. That's incredible. I have no idea how that happened. Add some gin, 150 grams. Tanqueray 10 is a good option, anything citrusy. And then you'll be left with this. So this is a smaller batch, which I've actually drank some of, which is the alternative milk version, just to prove it does work really well. And this is our full dairy fat milk version. So I'm gonna have a taste of each. So you wanna serve the drink in a really nice cold glass straight out the freezer. And I've got some clear ice in here as well. Just pour it straight over the top, as much as you like or as little as you like. I'd recommend as much. And then we're gonna garnish with grapefruit peel. So grapefruit just brings a nice aroma, nice kind of freshness when you have your first sip of the drink. Just gonna take a little peel from there. And then I quite like when I'm using just a simple citrus garnish just to tidy it up, but if you want to just chuck it on, just chuck it on. Already smells good. So you want to twist this over the drink. And I'm not stirring this down, it's already got a bit of dilution from the whey. And there we have Flat White White Negroni. Cheers. I love that drink. Damn, it's so good. It feels like a lot of work when I've explained it, but actually it's really easy to do, it's really fun as well. You're rewarded with a full bottle of delicious cocktail to sit in your fridge for at least a week, and it's just delicious. It's like a Negroni crossed with kind of an Aperol Spritz, crossed with the silkiest, creamiest mouthfeel I've ever had in a drink. You've got the coffee coming through, you've got the really nice orange, fresh citrus. The bitterness is just really refined. It really kind of fits into the drink really nicely. Whereas if you have white Negroni, it's a great drink, but it has like a very intense kind of bitterness, astringency, which is kind of characteristic of the drink. This just rounds everything out. Super sweet, super clean, but only natural sweetness. There's no sugar added in any way. So there you have the Flat White White Negroni. Make sure you tune in next week for the Americano Squared, which is another silly name. Subscribe if you like this sort of content. We're going to be doing lots of other stuff around coffee and cocktails, recipes, deep dives, and lots more fun stuff in the next few weeks. So make sure you make this at home, and I'll see you soon. Cheers for watching.